What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to the video. Today, I'll be doing my early 2026 NASCAR silly season predictions. I'm going to go through all the full-time entries and the part-time entries for 2026. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start and talk about the one car for Trackhouse Racing. There'll be no changes in 2026 as Ross Chastain's had a long-term contract extension with Trackhouse Racing. Ross Chastain's had a lot of success with Trackhouse over the course of the last few years, and I expect that success to continue in 2024 and beyond. He's also bringing Busch Beer over to sponsor him. I think that Ross Chastain will have a very solid and great season in 2024 and keep driving this one also in 2026. Up next, how about the 2-car for Team Penske? There'll be a change to this 2-car as Austin Cindric signed a multi-year contract extension with Team Penske, I believe either through the 2026 or 2027 season. The other big reason why there won't be any changes is because his dad is Tim Cindric, who is the president of Team Penske. He definitely needs to step up to the plate and have a much better season in 2024 for sure if he wants to keep the seat long term, but I don't expect any changes with this ride. I expect Austin Cindric to stay behind the wheel of the number 2 car in the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 3-car for Richard Childress Racing? I think there is going to be a change with this 3-car in 2026 because I believe that Austin Dillon is going to retire from full-time racing, though I do think he'll be part-time in the 2026 season, and Austin Dillon will go to more of an executive role. I predict that Austin Hill, who's currently driving the 21 car for RCR in the Xfinity Series, will take over that seat. It's no secret that Austin Hill has a contract right now through 2025, and there's been some chatter recently that he could retire in the not-so-distant future. So I think in 2026, I think Austin Hill has been with this team in Xfinity for the last couple of years. I think he's going to move up the Cup full-time and drive the number 3 car in 2026. Up next, how about the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing? There'll be no changes to the 4-car in 2026 as Josh Berry has a multi-year contract with Stewart-Haas Racing. While he's not bringing a lot of sponsorship and funding, Stewart-Haas Racing is hoped to turn the tide. Now, there is a chance that Stewart-Haas Racing could potentially switch manufacturers, maybe to Chevy perhaps, which could help Stewart-Haas Racing in the long term, but I don't expect any changes to the 4-car. I expect Josh Berry to continue driving the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2026. Up next, how about the 5-car for Hendrick Motorsports? There'll be no changes to the 5-car as Kyle Larson has a contract with Hendrick Motorsports through the 2026 season. Now, I do think there's a chance that Kyle Larson is going to get an extension through like 2028 or 2029. Considering Kyle Larson's had a lot of success over the course of the last couple seasons, I believe that they're going to keep Kyle Larson in the 5-car for the long term. So I expect that Kyle Larson will stay in the 5-car for the long-term future, including in 2026. Up next, how about the 6-car for RFK Racing? There'll be no changes in the number 6 car as Brad Keselowski is, of course, the co-owner of RFK Racing. Now, I do think there's a chance and possibility that Brad Keselowski could retire at the end of the 2026 season, considering that Brad Keselowski at the end of 2026 will be 42 years old. But Brad Keselowski still being behind the wheel and reaching the peak of his career, I think there's a really strong chance and possibility that he will stay behind the wheel of the 6 car for the long term and the relative future with his own organization. Up next, how about the 7-car for Spire Motorsports? I'm not expecting any change to the 7-car as Corey LaJoie will be behind the wheel of the 7-car, in my opinion, in 2026, considering he also signed a multi-year contract extension, which I believe goes through 2025. But Spire really likes Corey LaJoie a lot, which is the big reason why I think that he is going to stay behind the wheel, and I think he's going to show some pretty massive and major improvement with Spire Motorsports over the course of the next couple seasons, including in 2026. Up next, how about the 8-car for Richard Childress Racing? There'll be no changes to the 8-car by 2026 as Kyle Busch has a long-term deal with Richard Childress Racing. Now, Kyle Busch will be 41 in 2026, but Kyle Busch is still at the peak of his career. And I expect that Kyle Busch is going to stay behind the wheel at least for the next 5 or 6 seasons, looking to get better and get back to victory lane and win many more races in the number 8 car. So I don't expect any changes, and I think Kyle Busch will continue driving the 8 car in the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 9-car for Hendrick Motorsports? There'll be no changes to the 9-car as Chase Elliott has a contract with Hendrick Motorsports through the 2027 season. But with how good of a driver Chase Elliott is, I expect him to get a long-term contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports through later seasons. He's also bringing sponsorship funding, which will be another massive reason why Chase Elliott will stay in the number 9 car for the long-term future throughout his whole entire career. Up next, how about the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? I'm not expecting any changes by 2026. I think Noah Gragson is going to be long-term with Stewart-Haas Racing. I think the goal for Noah Gragson is to show a lot of improvement in the 2024 season, considering 2023 was a complete disaster for him. But I think he'll be able to eventually get sponsors and funding back with him and working with him in the not-so-distant future. So nonetheless, I think that we'll see Noah Gragson stay in the number 10 car for the long-term future. Up next, how about the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? I think there is going to be a change to the 11 car by 2026, as I think 2025 will be Denny Hamlin's final season in the NASCAR Cup Series, as Denny Hamlin will be 45 at the end of the 2025 season. And it's no secret that Denny Hamlin only signed a contract, I believe, through 2025. My prediction right now, who I think will replace him, is Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith is joining Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024 and is expected to be a championship threat and contender, and is one of the reserve drivers for Toyota. So I believe that Chandler Smith is going to take over the number 11 car because he does bring sponsorship funding with him. I think Chandler Smith will be driving the number 11 car in 2026. Up next, how about the 12 car for Team Penske? There'll be no changes to the number 12 car, as Ryan Blaney has a long-term contract with Team Penske. He's also coming off winning the championship in 2023 after a very strong season. Ryan Blaney is a very, very good driver in my opinion, and I think he's only going to get better because he's only just turned 30 years old this offseason. So I expect Ryan Blaney to continue showing a lot of improvement with Team Penske, and he'll be looking to win more races and try to get another championship by the 2026 season with Team Penske. Up next, how about the 13 car for Kaulig Racing? Yes, I think by 2026, Kaulig Racing will have a third entry in the field, most likely on a part-time basis. I predict that Josh Williams, AJ Allmendinger, and Derek Kraus will be the drivers. Josh Williams will be driving for Kaulig Racing and Xfinity full-time in 2024. AJ Allmendinger, even though he'll be in his mid-40s, I think is still going to want to race Cup. And Derek Kraus, I think, deserves some Cup opportunities. So I expect this 13 car to make some starts throughout the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season, 26 season, I should say. Up next, how about the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? There'll be no changes to the number 14 car, as Chase Briscoe has a long-term contract with Stewart-Haas Racing. Even though he talks about how this year, 2024, is really going to determine his future, Chase Briscoe is a very good driver, in my opinion, and deserves to stay behind the wheel of the number 14 car. So I think Stewart-Haas Racing is going to grant his wish, and I think with the sponsorship from Hendrick he brings, I think he'll be staying in the 14 car for the long-term and the foreseeable future. Up next, how about the 15 car for Ware Racing? I expect Ware Racing to have this number 15 car as a rotation car by 2026, and I predict that Kaz Grala and Riley Herbst will be the two drivers behind the wheel. I think Riley Herbst is going to get quite a few starts in the seat, and I think this ride will actually split between both of them, where Riley will get 18 races, and Kaz Grala will get the other 20 races, so that Riley Herbst can get more Cup Series experience, and Kaz Grala can at least get a little more than Riley Herbst in this 15 car. Up next, how about the 16 car for Kaulig Racing? This car, once again, like it's been for this year, I think will be a rotation seat in 2026, with drivers Matt DiBenedetto, AJ Allmendinger, and Ty Dillon. I think Matt DiBenedetto is going to end up driving for Kaulig Racing at some point in the 2024 season. There's been a lot of rumors that Chris Rice kind of revealed in Series XM that Matt DiBenedetto was supposed to be headed there. AJ, of course, will make select starts in the 16 car, considering he's been with Kaulig Racing for a long time at this point. And Ty Dillon, of course, brings sponsorship funding. So therefore, this will be a rotation seat in 2026 as well. Up next, how about the 17 car for RFK Racing? There'll be no changes to the number 17 car, as Chris Buescher, I expect to get a long-term contract extension with RFK. Chris Buescher was really good last year in 2023, scoring 3 victories, and I expect Chris Buescher to win a lot more races in his NASCAR Cup Series career by the 2026 season. Even though we're only 2 seasons away from that at this point, I think RFK is going to keep him long-term, and I think that Chris Buescher 1,000% will be staying behind the wheel of the number 17 car in the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? Yes, heard that right. I think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to bring back the number 18 car by 2026. Because I think Mark Truex Jr. is likely going to retire. And my prediction is that John Hunter Nemechek will be taking over this number 18 car. I think there's a good chance Truex retires at the end of 2024. And with John Hunter Nemechek being high up on Toyota stable, and with him only, I think, having a 1-year deal with Legacy at the moment, I think that we're going to see John Hunter, with how good he was with Joe Gibbs and Xfinity, I think he gets promoted to Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? There'll be no changes to the number 20 car as Chris Bell has a long-term contract with Joe Gibbs Racing. Chris Bell's coming off having a great year in 2023, scoring 2 victories, and also looks to be a championship threat in 2024. And I expect that Christopher Bell is going to get better as a driver in the sport. He's a great ambassador for the sport, is extremely competitive, has 5 or 6 career wins up to this point. I expect Christopher Bell to win a lot more races and contend for a championship by this particular moment and point. Up next, top of the 21 car for the Wood brothers. I don't think there's going to be any changes to this 21 cars. I think Harrison Burton is going to stay in the number 21 car by the 2026 season. Now, look, I know a lot of people are going to be questioning this move considering Harrison Burton is on the hot seat and has been in Cup for the last 3 years. Even though he has struggled, I think because of sponsorship funding he has, I think he is going to stay behind the wheel of the number 21 car long term and keep driving the number 21 car in the 2026 season with the Wood brothers. Up next, how about the 22 car for Team Penske? There won't be any changes in the number 22 car as Joey Logano signed a long-term contract extension with Team Penske through 2028. Joey Logano is coming off winning the championship a few years ago. I expect Joey Logano in this 2026 season, like 2024, to probably make the Final Four. Considering every even year, he's made the Final Four since this playoff format has started. I expect Joey Logano to continue doing great things with the Team Penske group. Up next, how about the 23 car for 2311 Racing? I don't expect any changes by 2026. I think Bubba will also stay in the 23 car for the long-term future. I've heard rumors that his contract ends at the end of 2024, but I believe that Bubba Wallace is going to get a long-term extension and be a lifer at the scene. Bubba Wallace had a great year last year in 2023, and I expect that to continue, and maybe by the 2026 season, Bubba Wallace can take that number 23 car to a potential championship 4 run. Up next, how about the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports? There won't be changes to the number 24 car as William Byron has a contract through 2025, but I also expect that William Byron is going to get another extension. William Byron is a really good driver in my opinion, and again, with how good he was last year, scoring 6 victories, I think Hendrick Motorsports is going to keep him in that number 24 car long term. He's a great talent, a great driver, and I expect him to win a lot more races in the Cup Series, including in the 2025 and also the 2026 seasons, and also 2024 as well. Up next, how about the 31 car for Kaulig Racing? I don't expect any changes to the 31 car by 2026. I expect Dale Hemrick to continue driving the number 31 car in the 2026 season. Dale Hemrick brings sponsorship and funding from Circle and other companies, which will be the reason why he'll be staying behind the wheel. As much as I don't think he's the most amazing talent in the world, if you bring sponsorship and funding, you are more than likely going to be driving behind the wheel of this seat. So I predict Dale Hemrick will stay behind the wheel of the number 31 car by 2026. Up next, how about the 33 car for Richard Childress Racing? Yes, I think Richard Childress Racing is bringing back the 33 car by 2026 in a lot more races. I predict that Jesse Love, who will be joining RCR and Xfinity in 2024, will make some starts in his car probably in 2025. I think Austin Dillon will drive part-time in the seat in 2026. And also I think Brody Kosecki, yes, there's been a big fall with Erebus recently, but I expect that Brody Kosecki also makes some select Cup starts in this number 33 car. I think this car will show up for a lot of races, including maybe in the Daytona 500, potentially as well. Up next, how about the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports? I don't expect any changes by 2026. I think Michael McDowell will stay behind the wheel of the number 34 car by the 2026 season. Now, he'll most likely be the oldest full-time Cup Series driver in the field by the 2026 season, but Michael McDowell has improved and matured and gotten better as a race car driver to where I think Front Row Motorsports really likes him. He's had a career last year in 2023, and I expect Michael McDowell to continue doing great things with Front Row by the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 36 car for Front Row Motorsports? Yes, I think Front Row Motorsports is bringing back the 36 car in many races by 2026. I predict that Riley Hurst is going to run the other 18 races that are not on his schedule in this seat. I think Haley Deegan will make a couple select starts in the 36. And I also think Frankie Muniz will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut by the 2026 season. This car will be a rotation car by 2026, and I think the 3 drivers I mentioned will be behind the wheel of this seat. Up next, how about the 38 car for Front Row Motorsports? I don't expect any changes by 2026. I think Todd Gillen will stay behind the wheel of the number 38 car. Now, there's definitely a lot of pressure going into the 2024 season where he definitely needs to step up and could get moved over to the Wood brothers if things don't go well. But with how good of a driver Todd Gillen is, I think that he'll stay behind the wheel of this number 38 car for the long-term and foreseeable future. Up next, how about the 40 car for Niece Motorsports? Yes, you heard me right. I think Niece Motorsports is going to jump up to the Cup Series in 2026 on a part-time basis. And I predict that Bailey Currey will be behind the wheel. Bailey Currey has made select Cup Series starts before with Niece Motorsports and, of course, is joining their team in trucks in 2024. Bailey Currey also very capable, and also with Niece Motorsports, as talked about in the past, they do want to go Cup Series racing. I think it happens in 2026. Up next, how about the 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing? There'll be no changes by 2026 as I predict that Ryan Preece will stay behind the wheel of the number 41 car in the 2026 season. Ryan Preece brings sponsorship and funding, and Stewart-Haas Racing and Tony Stewart really like Ryan Preece. So therefore, I think Ryan Preece 1000% is going to stay behind the wheel of the number 41 car by the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 42 car for Legacy Motor Club? I think there'll be some changes to this number 42 car by 2026, and my prediction is I think that Sheldon Creed will be taking over the 42 car by 2026. I think Sheldon Creed is going to be really good in Xfinity this year in 2024 and only get better in 2025 as well. I expect him to have a really solid and strong year with that group in Xfinity, and I think that with how good he does, I think eventually he'll get promoted to the Cup Series by the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club? I don't expect any changes by 2026. I think Eric Jones is going to stay long-term with Legacy Motor Club and maybe finish his career with that team. I expect to have a big year with Legacy Motor Club in the NASCAR Cup Series this year in 2024, and I think that how good he's been with Legacy and the switch to Toyota, I think he'll 1000% stay behind the wheel of the number 43 car with the Toyota brand, especially in 2026. Up next, how about the 45 car for 2311 Racing? There won't be any changes to the number 45 car by the 2026 season as Tyler Reddick has a long-term contract with 2311 Racing. He had a great year in the NASCAR Cup Series with that team in 2023, and I expect him to only get better and eventually be a championship threatened contender, and he might be able to eventually get that first NASCAR Cup Series title like he was able to do in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. Up next, how about the 47 car for JTG Doherty Racing? I don't think there's going to be changes to the number 47 car, as I believe Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will stay behind the wheel of the number 47 car long term. He had a great year in 2023, and while by the 2026 season he'll be nearly 40 years old, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I think is going to end up becoming a much better driver in the sport. He's talented, he's really, really capable, and he's gotten better as a driver over the course of the last 2 years. So therefore, I think Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will stay behind the wheel of the number 47 car at least through the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports? I don't expect any changes by 2026 because Alex Bowman has a contract with Hendrick through 2026. Now, he could technically be a free agent at the end of the 2026 season, but technically Alloy's around through 2028, so I expect that he'll be in the 48 car probably through the 2028 season. So therefore, I think Alex Bowman will stay long-term and probably finish his NASCAR Cup Series career with Hendrick Motorsports, including in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 50 car for the Money Team? I think the Money Team is going to try to go full-time by the 2026 season, and I predict that Jeffrey Earnhardt will be the driver they choose. Jeffrey Earnhardt, in my opinion, has been kind of linked at the past with the Money Team, and I think he would do a solid job with the Money Team as well. Obviously, there's always a lot of talk and conversations whether the Money Team is going to always show up or not. I think that the Money Team will, in fact, decide to show up to the NASCAR Cup Series, and I think they're going to choose Jeffrey Earnhardt as a driver that they will choose to put behind the wheel of that seat by the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 51 car for Ware Racing? I don't expect any changes for the 51 cars. I believe Justin Haley has a long-term contract with Ware Racing, or at least a multi-year deal with the team. Justin Haley is going to provide a lot of assets to Ware Racing as RFK's alliance is going to get tighter with Ware Racing over the course of the next few seasons. I think that's going to play a huge role and a massive benefit to Justin Haley in 2024 and beyond, including in the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing? I don't expect any changes for the 54 car long term, as Ty Gibbs, of course, is the grandson of Joe Gibbs. I expect Ty Gibbs to improve over the course of the next couple seasons by the 2026 season, and I expect him to win quite a few races and be a legitimate championship contender by the 2026 season. And I think he's going to get better and show a lot of massive and major improvement by that 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Up next, how about the 60 car for RFK Racing? This course is a Stage 60 car. I expect this car to run a lot more races over the course of the next few years, and I predict that Hailie Deegan, David Reagan, and Cam Waters are going to be the drivers. Hailie Deegan will get a couple of select starts in the number 60 car. David Reagan will run all the super speedways, and I think that Cam Waters is going to run a lot of road course races in this seat. It's been a huge supercars invasion as of late, and I think that this 60 car is going to run quite a few races throughout the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 62 car for Beard Motorsports? I don't expect any changes by 2026. I predict that Anthony Alfredo will most likely be behind the wheel of the number 62 car. And I expect this car is going to run a lot more races as well. I think it might run some road course races, and I think it also could end up running some more super speedway races than it is in 2024. Nonetheless, I think Anthony Alfredo for sure will be behind the wheel of this number 62 car, considering he brings a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship over to Beard Motorsports this respective season. Up next, how about the 6-7 car for 2311 Racing? I expect the 6-7 car to run quite a few races in 2026. Drivers like Carl Edwards perhaps maybe coming out of retirement, Corey Heim making some select starts with his team, Kamui Kobayashi perhaps, Eric Almirola, and Kurt Busch as well if he's able to get medically cleared by the doctors. I think that 2311 Racing eventually wants to have 3 full-time entries maybe for Corey Heim, but as of right now, I think the 6-7 car by the 2026 season will at least be part-time or maybe eventually will be full-time by the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 71 car for Spire Motorsports / Trackhouse Racing? This actually will be a Trackhouse Racing car by 2026 with Zane Smith behind the wheel. Zane Smith has a long-term contract with Trackhouse Racing, and of course he'll drive for Spire in 2024. I believe that Zane Smith will be behind the wheel of the seat for many years to come, and again, this car I think will be incorporated being a full-time Trackhouse car by the 2026 season. I predict Zane Smith will be behind the wheel of the seat by the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season, as same in the number 71 car. Up next, how about the 77 car for Spire Motorsports? There'll be no changes to the number 77 car as Carson Nospar has a multi-year contract with Spire Motorsports at least throughout either 2025 or 2026. I think Carson Nospar is going to continue showing a lot of growth and maturity as a driver in this sport, and I expect that Carson Nospar will be a very good driver long-term for the sport, get better, show a lot of improvement, and help Spire Motorsports grow as an organization, and I think he'll be behind the wheel 100% of his number 77 car for many years to come, including in the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 84 car for Legacy Motor Club? Now, by 2026, I think Jimmy Johnson is going to officially retire and focus on being an owner. I think that Corey Heim is going to be the driver of this seat. Corey Heim obviously is going to become the reserve driver in 2024 for 2311 Racing and also Legacy Motor Club during that time. I think that he'll be driving a lot of races behind the wheel of the 84, maybe around 10 to 12 races, and be getting a lot of experience behind the wheel. I think that this car will run, though, quite a few races by the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 88 car for Junior Motorsports? Yes, I think by 2026, Junior Motorsports will jump up to the Cup Series. And I predict that Matt DiBenedetto potentially, Sam Mayer, and Brandon Jones will get behind the wheel. Matt DiBenedetto, in my opinion, deserves an opportunity and chance with a solid and good organization. Sam Mayer, of course, drives for Junior Motorsports in Xfinity. And then you have Brandon Jones, who brings sponsorship and funding. I think all three of these drivers will get a chance and opportunity to drive behind the wheel of the Junior Motorsports car. As I think by 2025, that team will be in the Cup Series. Up next, how about the 91 car for Trackhouse Racing? This will be the Project 91 entry, and I think this car will stay around for a long time. I think that Helio Castroneves will be one of the drivers, and I also think Juan Pablo Montoya will also make a couple select starts back in NASCAR. Juan Montoya has not raced in NASCAR in nearly a decade, and Helio has been interested in racing in NASCAR in the past. I think this also could be a potential for Carl Edwards as well, if Carl Edwards was ever one to come back, but I think that we'll see the Project 91 car show up for quite a few races throughout the 2026 season. Up next, how about the 97 car for Trackhouse Racing? I think this will be Shane Van Gisbergen's seat. Look, the 97 car has been a car that is really reserved for Shane Van Gisbergen. He's going to run that car in Xfinity with Kaulig, also making select starts with Kaulig Racing this year in Cup. I think Shane Van Gisbergen will be driving this number 97 car. I think Trackhouse really likes him. He won a race to the team, obviously, last year, and I expect to win quite a few races and eventually go full-time Cup Series racing by the 2025 season, and will stay behind the wheel of a number 97 car for the long-term future, including in the 2026 season. And finally, let's talk about the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. There'll be no changes in the 99 seat, as I think Daniel Suarez will stay behind the wheel of this car. Look, I know Daniel Suarez is on the hot seat going into this year. He technically does have a contract for the 2025 season, but there's a lot of talk if he doesn't step up to the plate, he could lose his seat. But the one thing that helps Daniel Suarez is he brings sponsorship and funding. So therefore, I think that we're going to see Daniel Suarez stay behind the wheel of the seat in the 2024 season, at least 2026 especially. And I think that Trackhouse, with the sponsorship he brings, I think he stays behind the wheel of the seat for the long term and the foreseeable future. So, those are my early 2026 NASCAR Cup Series silly season predictions. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as for a patron as well. Link description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your early 2026 predictions? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I got a lot of great content dropping on the channel as the NASCAR season has officially begun. There's a lot of fun content dropping in the course of the next 2 weeks, and I can't wait for you guys to check it out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.